content presented in this podcast is based on real events and may contain graphic descriptions of violence, sensitive topics, and explicit language that may be triggering, offensive, or sensitive subjects to some viewers and listeners. Discretion is advised. The purpose of this podcast is to explore and discuss true crime cases for entertainment and educational purposes only. This podcast does not intend to glorify or sensationalize crime, but rather aims to analyze and understand the complexities of human behavior in the criminal justice system. We encourage listeners to approach this content with empathy, critical thinking, respect for the victims and their families.
Tylenol may be making today's headlines, but it's not the first time Tylenol's dark legacy resurfaces. And back then, it was for a much deadlier reason. Now, back in September of 1982, a 12-year-old girl swallows an ordinary painkiller to ease a headache and a sore throat. And within a couple hours, she dies. But by the end of the week, 6 more victims would be followed, all poisoned by cyanide-laced Tylenol capsules. A city and soon a nation was gripped by fear. How could something so everyday, so familiar, become so deadly? Who could slip poison into a bottle meant to heal? And more importantly, could they strike again? Stores were emptied, news anchors warned families to not touch their medicine cabinets, and a corporate giant scrambled to protect its brand while grappling with questions that had no answers. Decades later, the killer remains unknown, but the legacy of terror and lessons learned from one of America's most infamous crimes continue to haunt us. Tonight, we're going to rip open the box and break open the seal and look inside the Tylenol murders, the suspects, the corporate secrets, and the copycats to uncover the story behind the headlines. So, with that being said, it's time to start the show. Let's hit it. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot. I'm your host, Winnie Schrader. Tylenol has made it into the headlines for obvious reasons, but we're not going to talk about that on this show. But it reminded me of what happened back in 1982 in the Chicagoland area. Now, Netflix came out with a new documentary series called Cold Case, The Tylenol Murders, just this year. And so I rewatched it. I'm like, I should probably cover this case because it's very interesting. And my husband Dave actually lived through it in Chicago. So why don't we kind of take the time machine and go back to 1982 in Chicago and take a look at the Tylenol murders and find out what happened, how it happened, who did it, and how did they prevent it from happening again. In the early fall of 1982, Chicago became the epicenter of one of the most terrifying public health crises in American history until COVID. But this was way more terrifying if it was deliberate or random. This isn't just a virus unleashed onto the public. Oh, no, 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 no. This was Russian roulette with over the counter medication with no set target, location, or even motive. Now, on the morning of September 29th, a 12-year-old girl, Mary Kellerman of Elk Grove Village, woke up with a sore throat and a runny nose. Common cold. Her parents, believing it was nothing serious, gave her a single capsule of extra-strength Tylenol. Within hours, Mary was rushed to the hospital and after suddenly collapsing. Despite doctors' efforts, she died shortly thereafter. No one could have imagined that a common household pain reliever was the weapon that had killed her. The same day, tragedy spread across Chicago's suburbs. In Arlington Heights, a 27-year-old postal worker, Adam Janis, collapsed and died after taking Tylenol for chest pain. Grief stricken, his family gathered at his home. His brother Stanley, 25, and Stanley's wife, Teresa, 19, each took a capsule from the very same bottle Adam had used. Within minutes, both fell violently ill. By the end of the day, Stanley, Teresa were also dead. By nightfall, 3 members of one family had perished in a span of a few hours, all linked by the same over the counter medication. And these were not the only cases. In the coming days, more victims would emerge. Mary McFarland, 31, a mother of 2 and an employee at a distribution center. Mary Reiner, 27, who had just given birth to her 4th child. And Paula Prince, 35, a United Airlines flight attendant who was found lifeless in her Chicago apartment with an open bottle of Tylenol nearby. 7 lives in total cut short in a matter of days.
We would like them to get it out of their home.
This product may be contaminated with cyanide.
Cyanide happens to be a drug that can cause sudden death.
Paula was murdered. She was just murdered.
This could go on for quite a while, or it could resolve itself very quickly.
It was the beginning of a nightmare for Chicago, a nightmare that is still not over for some. 7 people were dead because someone had laced capsules of extra-strength Tylenol with cyanide. And there was fear more people, more innocent people, would die. The victims could give no answers. The only common thread was Tylenol. The dead included a postal worker, a newly married couple, a flight attendant, 7 random victims from all walks of life. The cyanide snuffed out lives in Elk Grove Village, Winfield, Lombard, Chicago, and 3 lives in Arlington Heights. Stanley and Teresa Janis, newlyweds, took capsules from the same bottle as Stanley's brother Adam had done only hours before. All 3 died. Now a family who had celebrated a wedding was in mourning. Teresa's parents and brothers say losing her has changed their lives.
They destroy life to my daughter. I just can't believe it. Somebody tried to play a game for themselves to destroy somebody else, but in other words, they destroy people's life. Even they don't know them. It's very, very painful for us.
It's like a match made in heaven. You know, it was the best wedding I've ever been to. It was nice. You know, they're just perfect people. You know, they're just, it's like life was made for them, you know.
The questions who and why screamed for answers. Law enforcement agencies formed a task force to begin sorting out a jigsaw puzzle with pieces that, so far, didn't fit. The capsules came off the shelves. The testing began. The public called in leads to police. And then Attorney General Tyrone Fainer would face reporters and cameras.
The focus of our investigation and the homicides we are investigating resulted from cyanide and cyanide poisoning.
The turning point in the investigation came thanks to a sharp-eyed nurse, Helen Jensen, Arlington Heights' only public health official. Assigned to help with Janice family's case, she visited their home and spotted a recently purchased bottle of Tylenol sitting on the kitchen counter. Noticing that the 6 capsules were missing, and Jensen's suspicion was immediate. The pills might be the common thread between the sudden clusters of death. She passed the bottle and receipt to investigator Nick Pichos, who relayed the evidence to Dr. Edmund Donahue, Deputy Chief Medical Examiner of Cook County. Now, Donahue had a hunch, cyanide poisoning. He instructed Pichos to smell the capsules. When he reported the faint odor of almonds, an indicator of cyanide, Donahue called in the county chief's toxicologist, Michael Schaefer. Testing confirmed their worst fear. 4 of the 44 capsules in Janice' bottle contained nearly 3 times the lethal dose of potassium cyanide. By then, the deaths could no longer be dismissed as a coincidence. At a hastily called press conference, authorities delivered a chilling warning to the public: stop taking Tylenol immediately. The scope of the crisis grew rapidly. Paramedics, by chance, had inventoried the Tylenol bottle used by young Mary Kellerman. Investigators discovered that her bottle and the Janus family bottle came from the same lot number, MC2880. Johnson & Johnson, the maker of Tylenol, quickly recalled that lot. But when tests revealed that the other victims' bottles came from different lots, including 1910 MD and MB2738, it became clear the tampering wasn't confined to a single batch. The recall expanded to cover every bottle of extra-strength Tylenol capsules sold in the Chicago area.
Today, Tylenol bottles filled with capsules, tablets, and liquid were coming in by the thousands to the basement of the Daly Center, where Department of Health workers were logging and sorting them for testing.
At this time, Roger, we have analyzed in excess of 39,000 capsules, an equal number of tablets. In response to your next inquiry, which is going to be how much has come in here, I can best describe it to you in terms of tons.
Have you found any with cyanide?
At this point, we have not.
Soon, contaminated bottles were being traced to shelves across the region. Jewel Foods in Arlington Heights and Elk Grove Village, and Osco Drug in Schaumburg, Walgreens and Dominic's in Chicago, and Frank's Finer Foods in Winfield. One unopened bottle even was purchased by Linda Morgan, wife of Judge Lewis Morgan, who later admitted she hesitated to take the pills because something felt off. That hesitation likely saved her life. The fear spread nationwide. Johnson & Johnson scrambled to contain the fallout. The company halted Tylenol's production and advertising, sent urgent warnings to hospitals and distributors, and eventually issued a sweeping nationwide recall on October 5th, 1982. More than 31 million bottles, valued over $100 million at that time, were pulled from shelves, making it one of the largest recalls in U.S. history. Television and newspaper ads pleading with consumers, do not take Tylenol products containing acetaminophen capsules. To rebuild trust, the company offered to exchange any Tylenol capsules already purchased for safer solid tablets. The scare was not limited to the United States. Airports around the world began asking travelers arriving from America whether they were carrying Tylenol in their luggage. The cyanide murders had transformed a household staple into an object of dread, shaking the public's faith in the safety of even the most ordinary consumer products. As investigators pieced together the evidence, a chilling truth began to emerge. The deadly Tylenol capsules had not been poisoned during the manufacturing process. Testing revealed that the bottles linked to the deaths had come from two separate Johnson & Johnson facilities, one in Pennsylvania and the other one in Texas. This eliminated the possibility of contamination at the source. Instead, the evidence pointed to a far more sinister scenario. Someone had walked into local stores, quickly removed Tylenol bottles from the shelves, laced the random capsules with potassium cyanide, and then just quickly returned the packages to be purchased by an unsuspecting customer. It was a terrifying realization. The killer had turned ordinary stores into unwitting delivery systems for murder.
Today, Johnson & Johnson, the parent company of the firm that manufactures Tylenol, has hired a suburban Northbrook firm, the Intertel Security Company, to investigate the Tylenol deaths. And in Washington, the head of Johnson & Johnson spoke out. Wayne Nelson feels somebody has it in for his company.
All I can tell you is it's another deliberate attempt to sabotage the product. I am indicating that this is a clear-cut example of indiscriminate murder.
Meanwhile, in Fort Washington, Pennsylvania, where Johnson & Johnson's subsidiary, McNeil Consumer Products, makes Tylenol, Michael Schaefer, the chief toxicologist of the Cook County Medical Examiner's Office, toured the plant. Outside the facility, Schaefer told R.I.J. Hudson that he was satisfied that no cyanide contamination occurred in the plant.
Unequivocally, yes, I would say that.
With no suspect in custody or clear motive, investigators turned to a creative strategy to draw the perpetrator out. Now, in 1983, the FBI approached Chicago's Tribune columnist Bob Greene with an unusual request. Working with the consent of grieving Kellerman family, Greene published the address and gravesite of the youngest victim, 12-year-old Mary Kellerman. The idea proposed by famed FBI profiler John Douglas was simple but risky. The killer, fascinated by his own crime, might be compelled to revisit a victim's home or grave once he knew the public was aware of the locations. Now, both the Kellerman home and Mary's grave was placed under 24-hour surveillance for months. Cameras recorded every visitor, every flower left behind, every passerby who lingered too long. Yet, despite the effort, the killer never appeared. Meanwhile, another potential lead surfaced. A Walgreens security camera captured what would become one of the most haunting images of the case. United Airlines flight attendant Paula Prince purchasing the very bottle of Tylenol that would end her life. In the frame, Prince could be seen at a checkout counter at 1601 North Wells Street in Chicago. Just behind her, investigators notice a man, a stranger with a beard, standing only a few feet away from her. Now, the Chicago Police Department released the still image to the public, suggesting that the bearded man might be the killer, or at least a key witness. The grainy photograph became a centerpiece of the manhunt, raising the unsettling possibility that the murderer had been close enough to watch Paula buy the poison pills that would seal her fate. From the moment investigators realized the deaths were not isolated tragedies, but linked by poison-laced Tylenol, one question haunted them more than any other. What kind of person does this? This wasn't a crime of passion, nor a targeted attack against a single individual. It was something far more chilling. Indiscriminate, faceless murder to poison medicine on store shelves was to murder at random without ever seeing the victims. The killer would remain invisible, blending into the crowd while watching chaos unfold on the nightly news. Now, Douglas believed the person behind the poisoning craved power and control. This was someone who wanted to strike terror into everyday life, to prove he could bend society to his will with something as small as ordinary as a pill. Yet, profilers also suspected that the killer was organized enough to plan and execute the tampering without drawing attention. He likely followed the case obsessively in the media, perhaps even felt a thrill watching hospitals, corporations, and law enforcement scramble in his wake. Now, against the backdrop of psychological theories, two men rose to the forefront of this suspicion. All right, so now let's take a look at a couple of the main two suspects that they think were the Tylenol murders. Now, James Lewis, the con man with a grudge. Now, if control and manipulation were the killer's motives, then James Lewis fit that mold all too well. A man with a history of fraud, deception, Lewis thrived on outsmarting institutions. When Johnson & Johnson received the letter demanding a $1 million to stop the cyanide killings, the extortion attempt appeared to be a classic Lewis, an elaborate scheme designed to exploit chaos for profit. Now, Lewis was initially thought to be capable of the poisonings because he had been arrested before. One of his clients, Ray West, who actually became a good friend of his, was found dismembered in the attic of his own home, and authorities found a forged check that Lewis tried to cash from the client's account. But the charges were later dropped because the authorities didn't read Lewis his Miranda rights on time. Seriously, he got off because of that? Oh my God.
This was the scene 4 years ago in Kansas City when police found the dismembered body of 72-year-old Raymond West, a friend of James Lewis. Lewis was indicted for the murder of West, but the charge was later dropped because of technicalities. Now the case has been reopened. FBI lab tests found Lewis's fingerprints on a pulley used to hoist West's body. But despite massive publicity and a nationwide search for Lewis and his wife Leanne, no trace of the missing couple has been found. The couple vanished on September 3rd. That was the day they moved out of their apartment on Chicago's North Side, where the Lewises had lived for 9 months under the name of Robert and Nancy Richardson. Authorities believe Lewis wrote an extortion note to the manufacturers of Tylenol demanding $1 million be sent to an account at the Continental Illinois Bank.
But his motives may have gone deeper than greed. Lewis was known to harbor grudges against employers, business associates, authority figures. Some investigators theorize that extorting Johnson & Johnson wasn't just about money, but it was about humiliation. He blamed Johnson & Johnson for the failed attempt to fix the heart condition his daughter Toni had. Now, Johnson & Johnson's product was to use to fix a hole in her heart, and it eventually failed and gave way and caused her death. But by writing the letter, Lewis placed the multinational corporation on his mercy, forcing them to dance to his demands. Now, Detective Barton says in the series that law enforcement officials found drafts of extortion letters in Lewis's home and books about poisonings. The details he included in the letter troubled investigators. He described a method of poisoning nearly identical to the FBI's working theory. Buy Tylenol, lace the Tylenol capsules with cyanide, and return the bottles to shelves. How could he have laid out the crime so precisely unless he either did it or thought about doing it? Worse still, the letter's timeline raised red flags. It was postmarked October 1st, 1982, just days after the first murders. Now, Lewis admitted he had spent 3 days drafting it. So if this is true, that meant he started drafting the letter before the public even knew the killings were linked to Tylenol. Now, that's a chilling possibility, and insider knowledge would have was enough for the Department of Justice to quickly conclude years later that Lewis was the killer, even if the evidence never reached the threshold for charges. In the documentary on Netflix, Cold Case, The Tylenol Murders, documentarians Yotam Gwendelman and Ari Pines, Lewis said, chuckling at the end of the first episode, "I wouldn't hurt anybody." The series ends, though, with him saying, "You can keep asking me questions forever and ever. If you ever come up with a technology which allows you to read my mind, then you won't find anything incriminating." They never had any forensic evidence actually to pin him to the murders, Gwendelman explains. Now, as the former Chicago police superintendent, Richard Bresnik, put it, James Lewis was an asshole, but he wasn't the Tylenol killer. Now, the Netflix interview for the series turned out to be his last interview before his death on July 9th, 2023. Now, as to why Lewis participated, Gwendolyn says he just enjoys the attention and got a kick out of being seen as a mastermind of crime who escaped justice. Pines added he liked to be regarded as the Tylenol man without having to sit in prison for it. Psychologically, Lewis was seen as cunning, narcissistic, and manipulative, the profile of someone who wanted recognition, even if it was only through fear. Now, another suspect, Roger Arnold, the erratic outsider. Where Lewis was cold and calculating, Roger Arnold was unstable and impulsive. A dock worker at a Jewel Osco in Melrose Park, Arnold's life had spiraled out of control after his marriage collapsed. He drank heavily, obsessed over conspiracies, and began telling acquaintances that he possessed potassium cyanide. Unlike Lewis, though, Arnold wasn't demanding money or power. His possible motive was murkier. Some speculated he wanted notoriety. Others believed that he was consumed by anger and paranoia, lashing out at the world he believed he was wronged. He was linked to the case through unsettling coincidences. He had once worked with a father of victim Mary Reiner, and his wife had been treated at a hospital near where Reiner bought her fatal bottle. In his home, police found the Poor Man's James Bond, a manual with instructions on making poisons. But Arnold's erratic personality may be his undoing. While police never charged him in the Tylenol case, he spiraled into violence in 1983. Convinced that the bar owner, Marty Sinclair, had ruined his life by reporting him to the authorities, Arnold hunted Sinclair down. In a tragic case of mistaken identity, he had shot and killed John Stanisha, a father of three, believing him to be Sinclair. Now, to profiles, Arnold fit a different potential motive displacement. His range over his failed marriage, his paranoia, and his fragile sense of control might have pushed him toward anonymous killings as a way to strike back at society he had felt abandon him. Poisoning strangers would give him both power and a twisted sense of revenge. But his lack of discipline, seen in the impulsive murder of Stanisha, suggested he lacked the patience and planning required for the Tylenol tampering. Now, the psychology of this is unknown. If not Lewis and not Arnold, then who? John Douglas and his colleagues painted a disturbing picture of a person who might have slipped cyanide into Tylenol capsules. He would likely be male, intelligent, and organized. He might have a history of grievances, someone who saw himself as powerless and used the murders to assert dominance over a world that ignored him. He was probably a loner, socially isolated, yet craved recognition. Watching news anchors warn millions of Americans not to take Tylenol may have given him the exact rush of power he sought. Now, both Lewis and Arnold checked both parts of that profile. Lewis had the brains, the manipulation, and the grudge feel motive. Arnold had the volatile nature, the anger, the proximity to his victims. But in the end, both were ruled out by DNA, which meant that somewhere out there, perhaps walking among the shoppers who once grabbed bottles from pharmacy shelves, the real Tylenol killer remained hidden. A phantom defined not by who he killed, but by the fear he created. Now, with the 21st century advancing with technology, and when it comes to forensics and investigative efforts, early in January of 2009, Illinois authorities decided to breathe new life into the Tylenol murder investigation, hoping that modern forensic techniques might finally crack a case that has haunted Chicago for nearly 3 decades. Federal agents descended on Cambridge, Massachusetts, home of James Lewis, the man forever tethered to the case because of his extortion letter, and seized multiple items. Through officials refused to provide specifics, their silence spoke volumes. The FBI hinted that they were not done with Lewis yet, but without definitive proof, he remained the suspect who always hovered near the center, but never quite in the bullseye. By 2010, law enforcement tried a more scientific approach. DNA samples were collected from Lewis and from Roger Arnold, the dock worker who had once bragged about possessing potassium cyanide. Now, in Arnold's case, his body was even exhumed so that the investigators could obtain a usable femur sample. Yet, to the frustration of the authorities, neither man's DNA matched the evidence recovered from the poisoned Tylenol bottles. Once again, the prime suspect slipped away, shielded not by alibis or airtight defenses, but by lack of physical proof. The 25th anniversary of the killings had stirred public memory, reigniting pressure on investigators in a written statement. The renewed push wasn't purely investigative, it was also symbolic. Now, further given the many recent advances in forensic technology, it was only natural that a second look be taken at the case and recovered evidence. Now, the case also took a bizarre twist in 2011 when FBI requested DNA samples from none other than the infamous Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski. At first glance, the connection seemed far fetched. Kaczynski was known for mailing bombs, not lacing medicine bottles, but circumstantial evidence overlap was enough to raise eyebrows. His first 4 bombings had occurred in Chicago around 1978 to 1980, placing him in the right place at the right time, adding fuel to speculation that his parents own a home in Lombard, Illinois, in 1982, where he occasionally stayed. Now, could Kaczynski, already seething with anti-technology rage and distrust of corporations, have staged an attack on Johnson & Johnson as an early act of domestic terror? Some theorize that poisoning a ubiquitous household product like Tylenol would have been an efficient way to sow fear in society. a goal consistent with the later bombings. But when confronted, Kaczynski denied ever possessing potassium cyanide and dismissed any involvement in the poisonings. Despite the fresh DNA sweeps and new suspect angles, the results left investigators in the same frustrating position. The Tylenol killer was still a ghost, leaving behind only speculation, shattered families, and a trail of fear that stretched well known into the 21st century. But there were copycats. There's always a copycat. Well, let's take a look at some of these copycat ones. Now, the Tylenol murders didn't just terrify the nation in 1982, they inspired a wave of chaos across the United States. Within days of the Chicago deaths, reports of tampered medicine bottles and household products surged nationwide. Some hoaxes fueled by panic, others were malicious intentions, and a few proved just as deadly. The original crime had demonstrated how fragile public trust in consumer goods really was, and opportunists, attention seekers, and killers all seized the moment on that fear. Now, by 1986, tragedy struck again. 3 additional deaths were linked to cyanide-laced gelatin capsules. Among them was 23-year-old Diane Ellsworth, who collapsed after taking extra-strength Tylenol in Yonkers, New York. Her poisoning sent shockwaves throughout the country and still scarred from 1982, reinforcing the idea that the killer or someone inspired by them could strike anywhere at any time. But the most notorious copycat case unfolded in Washington state. There, Susan Snow and Bruce Nickel died after consuming cyanide-tainted Excedrin capsules. Investigators eventually uncovered a chilling motive. Bruce's wife, Stella Nickel, had deliberately poisoned the bottles. Her goal was financial, collecting life insurance on her husband. But she went further, lacing an additional bottle to make his death looked like a part of a random product tampering spree. Now, Stella calculated cruelty left behind 2 bodies and earned her a conviction for murder. Her case became infamous not just as a copycat crime, but proof as how a greed could twist someone into using public fear as to cover up for her own personal gain. That same year, consumer confidence was shaken again with Procter & Gamble's pain reliever Tampering was pulled from the shelves after a spiking hoax in Chicago and Detroit. There, no one died, but the scare destroyed the company's product's reputation and forced the company to abandon it altogether. The Tylenol killer's shadow had grown so long that even rumors could kill a brand. Now, Washington state saw another deadly chapter in 1991 with the Sudafed poisonings. Kathleen Danker and Stanley McWhorter died while Jennifer Melling barely survived after slipping into a coma from a poison dose. The culprit turned out to be Jennifer's own husband, Joseph Melling, and engineered the attack in the sinister blend of financial desperation and domestic abuse. By poisoning random boxes, Melling hoped to disguise his wife's attempted murder as part of a wider tampering outbreak. Instead, his plan unraveled in court and he was sentenced to life in prison. Not all cases were clear cut, though. Now, in 1986, the University of Texas student Kenneth Ferries was discovered dead in his apartment, killed by cyanide-laced anacin capsules. At first, the death was ruled a homicide, another terrifying addition to the product tampering wave. But weeks later, authorities reconsidered. The FDA determined that Ferries had access to cyanide through a lab where he worked, and the medical examiner revised the cause to suicide. His death remains a reminder of how blurred the lines between murder, accident, and self-destruction had become in the midst of mass hysteria. Now, from insurance fraud to domestic abuse to false alarms, these copycat crimes revealed just how profoundly the Tylenol murders have destabilized the American psyche. What began as a single unsolved act of terror turned into a template of killers seeking cover, opportunists seeking the profit, and disturbed individuals seeking chaos.
Have you ever felt like something or someone was trying to tell you something? That inner nudge, that quiet whisper from the universe. With intuition sharpened by years of spiritual connection and a deep-rooted gift, Winnie Schrader delivers readings that are compassionate, insightful, and shockingly accurate. Whether you're facing a crossroads healing from heartache, or just curious what the cards reveal, Winnie creates a safe, sacred space to explore your journey. This isn't fortune cookie fluff. This is honest, intuitive guidance from someone who's helped hundreds find clarity, closure, and confidence. If you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. Book your session now at lovelotustarot.com and take control of your journey. That's lovelotustarot.com. Winnie's sessions are personal, powerful, and often life-changing. That's lovelotustarot.com.
Now, of course, this impacted Johnson & Johnson greatly. I mean, what are they gonna do? I mean, they did everything they could. This was the largest recall in one, I think, in US history still. I'm sure that they were just scrambling, trying to figure out, we have to figure out what's happening so we don't go bankrupt. I mean, oh my gosh, and they're a huge company, and I can't imagine what those corporate board meetings were like. Oh my god. Now, while investigators initially focused on the theory that it was a lone killer tampering with the bottles on store shelves, suspicion also swirled around the Johnson & Johnson itself. The company had been widely praised for its public response, swift recalls, public warnings, and new tamper-proof packaging. But behind the curtains, darker questions emerged. Now, it came to light that cyanide, in fact, was present in the Johnson & Johnson facilities after they denied it. The company admitted that it kept the cyanide on hand for testing purposes, but insisted that it was kept away in lock and key, far removed from any production line. Now, this reassurance, however, began to unravel. Former employees and internal reports suggested that the controls were nowhere near as airtight as advertising. Cyanide was stored in areas with limited oversight, and security protocols were inconsistent at best. For critics, this raised a disturbing possibility. The poison may have not been introduced in the store at all, but it could have came straight from inside the factory. If cyanide was accessible within Johnson & Johnson operations, the implications were staggering. Was this a case of corporate negligence, with an insider slipping poison into capsules during production? Or worse, was the company covering up a contamination problem to protect its image? Johnson & Johnson had billions of dollars in global reputation at stake, giving it every incentive to distance itself from any suggestion that the poison originated under its own roof. Now, law enforcement leaned heavily toward the store shelves. The independent investigators and journalists pointed out that it would have been far easier for someone inside to access to taint batches during manufacturing than to risk pulling the bottles from shelves, tampering it in public, and then sneaking them back on the shelves unnoticed. Even if a single worker or a contractor had unsupervised access, the factory line contamination theory became plausible. Now, Johnson & Johnson's public narrative that cyanide was locked away under controlled and never near production clashed with emerging evidence of lax security and poor chemical management. With no smoking gun ever tied to the poisonings directly to the company's plants, the fact that cyanide was present at all deepened public mistrust. Now, the irony was bitter. The company was lauded as a model of corporate responsibility for how it handled the crisis publicly. Yet, behind the scenes, the possibility lingered that its own vulnerabilities may have enabled the tragedy in the first place. And then the documentary, they mentioned that they use it for testing purposes. Well, what are you testing for? Well, does that mean the process of Tylenol can create potassium cyanide? I don't know why they're using potassium cyanide. What are they testing for with it? That's what I don't understand. The aftermath of the Tylenol murders were not only a public health disaster, but also a financial one. Johnson & Johnson's subsidiary, McNeil Laboratories, the maker of Tylenol, quickly submitted an insurance claim to the affiliated FM Insurance to cover the enormous cost of recalling millions of bottles from across the United States. The claim was rejected. The denial hinged on the crucial detail that Johnson & Johnson had chosen not to purchase specialized recall insurance, an additional layer of protection that would have covered exactly this type of catastrophe. Instead, the company relied on standard liability coverage only, which only applied if damages were directly caused by Johnson & Johnson's actions. Since the cyanide-laced capsules were deemed the result of criminal tampering by an unknown third party, the affiliated FM Insurance argued that the recall was a preventative measure, not a liability. So, in other words, the insurance company claimed that deaths may have triggered the recall, but the recall itself was not a direct liability event. McNeil Laboratories pushed back, though, filing lawsuits and arguing that its excess liability policy should have covered the recall and the staggering associated expenses. Courts repeatedly rejected the claim, stating bluntly that the recall was at best merely related to the 7 deaths rather than directly caused by them. This left Johnson & Johnson to shoulder with the financial burden of one of the most expensive recalls in pharmaceutical history. By 1991, Johnson & Johnson settled quickly with the families of the victims for an undisclosed amount. Now, Robert Niffen, a company spokesperson, stressed that while the corporation never had foreseen or prevented such a criminal tampering, it wanted to help families achieve closure and finally get the tragic event behind us. Though the statement painted Johnson & Johnson as compassionate, critics noted it was also a shrewd move to close the door on potential long-term liability and restore public trust in its brand. Now, the company's public relations strategy, masterminded by Harold Burson on the powerhouse PR firm Burson Marsteller, became a textbook example of crisis management. Johnson & Johnson projected transparency and accountability, pulling products from the shelves, running public safety campaigns, and promising reform, even if it fought tooth and nail in court to avoid financial responsibility. This is the reason why we have to get tools to get into pill bottles now, because of this issue. But obviously, it's like a bittersweet thing. It's a double-edged sword. You have to have those products protected so they can't be tampered with. So there's, seals and labels. And, oh my God, cotton and foil. And it's not easy when you have arthritis trying to get those at all. But it's a much needed thing. So let's kind of take a look and see what changes were made because of this issue. Now, if there's one lasting legacy of the Tylenol murders, it was change. The tragedy forced an entire industry to confront the vulnerabilities. Now, at the time, over the counter medication frequently came in powdered filled gelatin capsules, cheap, easy to swallow, and even easier to manipulate. A malicious actor could open a capsule, replace the powder with poison, and snap it shut with a little evidence of tampering with it. Now, after 1982, the FDA stepped it up with sweeping new regulations. Companies were required to use tamper evident packaging, which means induction of seals, shrink wrap, foil seals, and other barriers that made tampering visible. Now, capsules began to vanish from shelves, replacing by caplets. Those are the more solid compressed tablets. And a lot of them come in the same familiar shapes as a capsule, but they're impossible to pull apart, or you can't, refill it with another substance. Now, at the legislative level, the U.S. government made product tampering a federal crime, carrying severe penalties. This new law became instrumental just a few years later with the Excedrin cyanide case, where Stella Nichol was convicted of murdering her husband, Bruce Nichol, and killing another woman, Susan Snow, through the poisoned capsules. Nichol's conviction, which carried a 90-year sentence, was possibly only because of the federal tampering statutes born out of the Tylenol tragedy. Now, the ripple effects extended beyond pharmaceuticals. Food and consumer good companies rushed to adopt tamper proof packaging, from vacuum sealed jars to safety rings on soda bottles. Now, the Tylenol murders permanently reshaped the relationship between consumers, corporations, and safety. For Johnson & Johnson, it was a paradox. The same tragedy that cost lives, destroyed trust, and drained resources, who elevated the company's reputation as a model of crisis management. The Tylenol murders remain one of the most chilling, influential crimes in American history. 7 innocent lives were lost. Countless more were taken by fear, and trusted household brand names were forever changed. Despite decades of investigation, suspects, and theories, the identity of the killer has never been proven. Despite decades of investigation, suspects, and theories, the identity of the killer has never been proven. And yet, the central question lingers like a faint, bitter smell of almonds. Who poisoned these pills and why? Was it a disgruntled outsider, a manipulative extortionist, an unstable worker with inside access, or someone whose motive has long been buried with time? For now, more than 40 years later, the Tylenol murders remain unsolved, a reminder that even more ordinary objects can carry extraordinary dangers, and that some mysteries, no matter how heavily investigated, may never find their answers. Well, somebody very, very close to me, like, lived through this Tylenol scare, so, I wanted to get him on, and none other than my husband, Dave Schrader. Welcome to the show again. Where are you? Oh my goodness. You're so dramatic.
I'm coming in like the Reaper, baby. Coming in like the Reaper. Listen, let me tell you about this. I want to set the stage. I want to take you back a few years before the Tylenol scare. I grew up in and around the Chicagoland area, about 22 miles west of Chicago, maybe about 12 miles west of a town called Des Plaines. And 78, 79 unfolded this nightmare scenario of a mass murderer by the name of John Wayne Gacy. And I remember I was a kid at this time. I mean, I was young. I was 11, 12 years old, and hearing the atrocities. And I remember, oh, they've uncovered 3 bodies later on that afternoon. I was downtown Chicago with my dad and uncle and my cousin and my mom and my aunt, as news continued to break of the amount of bodies that they were uncovering. And it was just shock and awe. And people really put back on their heels to think that right in our own backyard, something like this could take place, something this horrific. And then you get past that, you get past the crime of the century with John Wayne Gacy. And then suddenly one day, the Tylenol scare, right? And I remember how this thing unfolded, and the fact that there was this mysterious death or 2 that had occurred, and people couldn't figure out what caused it. And then the real trauma started, right? Because people went to these funerals and came back with horrible headaches, went to their cabinet, grabbed some Tylenol, and then they expired as well. And I think it happened to a few of the different family members. And that's how it was finally narrowed down to the Tylenol had been poisoned, right? So I remember being absolutely terrified. We took Tylenol. That's all we had in our house, right? Plus, I know I was, I kept dislocating my knees all the time. So I was always on Tylenol and codeine. And I just had this fear that I was going to get a tainted batch. But then you sit back and you listen to what happened, and the concept that how vulnerable we were, that anybody could go in and just uncap it, take the pills apart, put poison back in, seal them, put them back, and put them on the shelves. And you'd never know. The fact that there wasn't bigger, better safety protocols in check. And here we are all of these years later, 40 some years later, right? And we're no closer to knowing what happened and who was really behind these crimes. So listen, again, I grew up in the 70s. So I made it through the Halloween panics, right? When all these stories kept zipping around about things like poison in our candies and razor blades and needles that were being hidden. And I think when you do the legwork, you find out that that wasn't really true. And actually, the one or two people that did poison it were like the parents of the kids that they poisoned.
Yeah.
So you'd find that a lot of that was just hooey. Then comes the John Wayne Gacy. Then comes the Tylenol scare, which again impacted and influenced us. I remember talking about it in high school. I remember, I think it was freshman, sophomore year, and they were making a big to-do about it, and they were going around collecting, if you had Tylenol, throw it out, throw it out, throw it out, and everybody was getting rid of their Tylenol from their purses, and I don't even know. I mean, that might have been the time you had to start giving your meds over to the school nurse.
Okay.
And then if you needed something, you'd have to go to the school nurse to get it. I'm not even sure that was a big alternate. But, you know, after surviving all that, within just a year or two, I felt like, oh my God, I'm still on my heels from this Tylenol scare, still looking over your shoulder, wondering how vulnerable you are.
Yeah.
And I find out I might be dying of AIDS.
What? AIDS?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you've heard about it. Oh, let me make it clear. It's not that AIDS. It's this AIDS.
I was overweight and looked terrible, but AIDS helped me lose 46 pounds. The AIDS diet plan helped me lose 28 pounds.
AIDS helps control your appetite so you lose weight, yet AIDS lets you taste, chew, and enjoy. And the appetite suppressant in AIDS is not a stimulant.
AIDS helped me to lose 18 pounds, and it doesn't contain anything to make me nervous.
Question, why take diet pills when you can enjoy AIDS? AIDS helps you lose weight without making you jittery.
Now, for those of you that are just listening, that sounds like the worst commercial ever for a mass communicable disease. But what AIDS was back in 1982, 83 were these delicious little chocolate cubes. And my mom would buy them because she was worried about her weight and she was a nurse. And then I would go in and eat them because they were chocolate squares. I didn't need to lose weight at that time. I was in peak form, almost like I am right now. And why is that funny? You find that funny?
No.
Anyway, so I eat these, and all of a sudden, news is breaking everywhere about AIDS. AIDS is killing people. AIDS is fast moving, and you're done. And I remember in a full blown panic, I had to go talk to my mom, and I sat down and I said, "Mom, I think AIDS might be killing me." And she's like, "What? What? How did this happen?" I said, "Well, I kept sneaking them out of the cabinet and eating them." And she's like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Your AIDS cubes. I'm hearing all over the news again how AIDS is killing people." And my mom just looked at me and she said, "You are an idiot. That's a totally different things. That's an autoimmune deficiency syndrome. What you were eating is an appetite suppressant." But talk about bad timing.
Right. The most unfortunate name ever to come at that time.
And you'd think we would have learned our lesson. I'm just going to throw one little word out there, and I'm going to say it. A beer. Corona.
Yes.
Yeah. How Corona's killing everybody. The beer industry had to be freaking out about that, right? At least
I know.
Corona. But yeah, it's funny how those little things kind of stick with you and they're in the back of your head. But I legitimately for a couple weeks, because I was too young to pay attention to the news, I just heard AIDS was killing people, and people were talking about AIDS in school, and you can get it from your friends and you can get it from the people you love, which again, thought you meant the little candy appetite suppressants.
Oh man, I have a feeling your mom I know exactly your mom's mindset in that moment when I had the floor gum incident with you.
Hey,
It's like
hey, listen, people don't realize just how vulnerable we are, right? I mean, listen, let's give the real story so that you're not just mocking a poor man. My daughter has type 1 diabetes. When we found out about it, this was back in the dark ages, we actually had to get up every 3 hours, finger poke, test her blood, make sure that it was on cue, go back to bed. Unless it was too high or too low, then you're up every 30, 40 minutes until you get them evened out. So I remember going to bed one night and I wake up and I've got that pasty yuck flavor in my mouth. And I'm like, what the heck I need some gum or something. And I get off the bed and I put my feet down and I look and there's 2 chiclets on the floor, which, listen, before you start judging, we have cats and I keep gum packets on my desk. So it's no question to me that they've just climbed up and knocked these down. So I grab the floor gum, threw it in my yapper, start chewing it. I walk in, I check on my daughter. As I begin checking on my daughter, my eyes start throbbing and my head starts spinning and my chest is tightening. I can't even tell you how bad it was getting. So my daughter's all worried because she's not feeling well and her blood sugar's a little high. And I'm like, honey, I'm gonna go to the bathroom real quick. I'll be right back. And I went in and I sat in the bathroom and I started trembling and I was sweating. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? I'm obviously dying because even this gum is not helping. My mouth still tastes like cats have pooped in it. This gum is unnatural. And I remember when my mom passed away from cancer, nothing tasted right. Everything tasted horrible. She said it literally tasted like poop. So I'm like chewing gum meant to freshen my mouth and it's not helping at all. And now my head's spinning, my chest is throbbing, my eyes are pulsing. I'm freaking out so much. My cat right now can't even tolerate it. Here, he's freaking out about this. Anyhow, he got into some bad floor gum too, apparently. I go in and I do the only thing I can. I kiss my daughter goodbye and I tell her I love her. And I climb into bed. I throw out the gum and I lay there sweating and trembling. And finally, I said those words. I said, Winnie, go get the kids. And she said, what do you mean go get the kids? I said, you need to go get the kids. This is it. This is the big one. I'm having a massive heart attack. I don't think I'm going to survive this. And she goes, well, what do you mean? Why would you say that? I woke up, my mouth tasted horrible, pasty. I ate 2 pieces of gum I found on the floor. And she goes, wait, you did what? This is a gum. I guess the cats knocked them off my desk. I threw them in my mouth. I chewed on. That didn't even make my mouth taste better. And now I'm spinning, sweating, eyes throbbing, chest tight. I feel horrible. She goes, hey, dummy, those were my nicotine gum, which she takes because she has Crohn's and it helps her body function better.
Yeah, we'll keep
but
it.
Apparently had just kept loose tabs in her pocket, like some kind of Mengele, some kind of, Kevorkian, just trying to figure out how she can get rid of the weakest link in the house. Apparently that was me. She's just, I'm going to just sprinkle gum like the gum fairy. And I'm going to wake up, boom, there's gum. I'm thinking, God, my mouth is horrible. I need gum. Boom. The Lord delivered me gum. Or so I thought. No, it was just some little psychopath in a 5-foot body that just sprinkled poison gum on my floor.
Yes, that's exactly what I did.
Let's not just eat things off the floor. And I said, I don't want to live in a house or a society where I can't eat gum off the floor to kill the flavor thing that's pooped in my mouth while I was napping.
I know, because that was the first thing out of my mouth was like, why would you eat gum off the floor?
Why wouldn't you eat gum off the floor? It's got a protective candy shell. And I kissed it and held it to Jesus to clean before I chewed it. I'm not an animal.
Oh, yeah, but I helped you. I helped flush it out of
You laughed at me. You mocked me openly. You brought me on your show to try to humiliate and shame me. Oh,
no, I didn't. No,
I was overweight and looked terrible, but AIDS helped me lose 46 pounds. The AIDS diet plan helped me lose 28 pounds.
AIDS helps control your appetite so you lose weight, yet AIDS lets you taste, chew, and enjoy. And the appetite suppressant in AIDS is not a stimulant.
AIDS helped me to lose 18 pounds, and it doesn't contain anything to make me nervous.
Question: why take diet pills when you can enjoy AIDS? AIDS helps you lose weight without making you jittery.
Oh yeah, let's try to deflect. Let's just try
Oh,
to deflect on the fact that you almost murdered me with 2 pieces of nicotine gum, which I believe after I chewed them for 30 minutes, you informed me I just ate a pack of cigarettes. It was like just taking an entire pack of Camel, no filters, sticking them in my maw and chawing on them.
yeah, I know. Yeah, I felt bad. I did. I
You
mean,
didn't feel
but
bad.
I
You
was
didn't.
just
You
like,
mocked me. You want to know the truth, folks? Zoom in, because eventually this is all going to come out. It's in my tell-all book. Someday it's going to be on like forensic files. If I ever die mysteriously, I'm not going to say she's going to murder me, but there should be somebody that should be looked at if I die suddenly and mysteriously. I'm just saying.
no,
Here's
no, no,
why.
no, no, no.
Because one night I get done doing my radio show. Late at night, my head's banging. I got a migraine, bad neck, degenerative discs. It's a mess. And I'm beating back this headache, and the pills aren't helping. AIDS chocolate chewables, not helping. Nothing. Floor gum, nothing's getting through. I say to my wife, I says, hey, can I take a hit off your medical oney? Because I've got this major migraine, and all I hear is everybody's like, oh, weed for migraines. So what does she do? She goes, oh, sure, let me just, here, take this one. She shuffles through, she parts them like the Red Sea, and like Moses draws just one out and hands it to me. I should have looked, because it probably is somewhere stamped with like a skull and crossbones, but I trusted her. And I take it, and I take the draw. And I held it. She went into the bathroom, and I held it, because I grew up in Chicago. I smoked Illinois ditchweed as a teenager, where you needed at least 40 good hits to maybe catch a buzz. So I took this hit like a champ. I took this hit like Mike Tyson just beat me to death in an alleyway. That's the kind of hit I took. One hit, and as she walks out of the bathroom, I spicoli release.
You totally did.
She walks out and she goes, where's all that smoke from? And I said, from my inhalation. And she goes, how many did you take? I said, just one. She goes, oh, okay. And I'm sitting there working on my computer, and all of a sudden the world starts to list a little. Everything's starting to go sideways. And I'm like, oh, good. It's hitting. That's how bad my headache is. I get up. My bed is 1.5 feet away, folks. I climb into my bed and begin plummeting down the depths of hell. You thought Reefer Madness was a joke? You thought that this was some movie made by contrarians who were just trying to frighten us? Oh no, I lived Reefer Madness that night, laying there, trembling, sweating, stomach twisting, head throbbing. And I told her, I said, something's wrong. I'm having a heart attack. She's like, you're not having a heart attack. I said, I'm dying. I'm pouring sweat. She goes, no, you're not. I reached over, grabbed her hand, and slapped it against my forehead, and like a squeegee of doom, pushed her hand down my face and across my neck and chest. And again, like Moses, the sweat parted and poured off both sides of me like an aquarium that just burst open at the seams. And she goes, oh, that's disgusting. I go, I know. And I thought I was dying. I overdosed on medical grade marijuana that this hoodlum, who's, she's not a doctor. What is she giving me drugs for? Blink if I'm in trouble.
You asked, and
Blink
you're
if I'm
a
in
grown
trouble.
man.
I don't know if you guys are paying attention, but I'm blinking. That night, I thought I was going to die. I called out to whatever God was on duty that night. I prayed so many prayers that I got down to rub-a-dub-dub, thanks for the grub, yay God, as a prayer, just to have something to say to keep me a little closer to the Lord. And she just mocked me openly. She scoffed at me. She mocked me openly after she gave me the drug that almost killed me.
No, I did not.
And what did I say? I called her out. I said, you and my other friend, I watch you guys take these hits all the time like champs. You're 5 feet tall, weigh 82 pounds with rocks in your pockets. And she hits this thing like Cheech and Chong could learn a thing. And I take one hit, I'm down. I'm like, you two are drug addicts. You have problems. Because I smoked a lot of ditchweed growing up, and I never felt like this.
Oh, yeah, that medical grade stuff is a lot stronger than Illinois ditchweed, I
Yeah,
can
that would
tell
have
you
been good
that.
information to give me before
Well,
I
I didn't think you were gonna Spicoli the damn thing. I
What,
mean
am I not a man? Am I not a man who has lived through the 70s, has lived through the horrors that are the Halloween candy debacles, which we all know now is just a way for our parents to get our favorite candy bar. Oh, this is like poison. I had to throw it out. Covered in chocolate like some kind of cookie monster freak. I survived that. I survived the Tylenol scare. I survived John Wayne Gacy. And I was a good looking young man with fluffy hair. I'd have been right in his wheelhouse. Then I dodged the bullet of AIDS. No, not that AIDS, this AIDS.
I was overweight and looked terrible, but AIDS helped me lose 46 pounds. The AIDS diet plan helped me lose 28 pounds.
AIDS helps control your appetite so you lose weight, yet AIDS lets you taste, chew, and enjoy. And the
Sounds like it's a pleasure. You could taste, chew, and enjoy, and then die. But I survived all of those things only to have my wife try to kill me not once, but twice. Once with floor gum, twice with medical grade marijuana that I can only guess she bought from some online Mexican catalog that she found in a bus stop urinal because nobody should have drugs that powerful. And that's all I have to say, folks. So be wary, be aware. I'm glad that my near-death experiences throughout the years might teach you all just a little something. So with that, I'm going to part now and turn things back over to Cruella DeVille here. And you guys don't judge just because of what I've gone through. I'm just warning you. If you're ever out and about and I got a headache, and she goes, oh, I've got something for you. Run!
Oh, my lovely husband, Dave Schrader. And he said he was dying. He said he wasn't breathing. And I'm like, honey, you are breathing. You're talking. That means you are inhaling and exhaling. Oh my God. Never a dull moment in our household. I can tell you that right now. But a couple of programming notes. I am going to be at a couple of events coming up here. Up next, I'm really, really excited. We are going to be at the Palmer House again, October 9th through the 12th. The Halloween hijinks. This is going to be so much fun. We have Dalen Spratt. He was from Ghost Brothers, and now he has his own YouTube channel called Graveyard Shift, where he goes out and does spirit box sessions in graveyards. It's awesome. And then, of course, Dave Schrader and Diet Renee. She's a talented medium. She's going to be there doing gallery readings. We're going to be doing ghost hunts, presentations. I'm going to be there doing tarot readings. Again, there will be a link for darkness events in today's description. So please check that out. And another event coming up here, I have the Up North Paracon at the Minnesota Haunted Museum, November 8th this year. We have Shane Pittman, we have Dave Schrader, both with the new show, Paranormal Mysteries, which it's just blowing up everywhere. Everybody's loving it. I love the first episode. I'm not going to say anything about it because I know some people are still signing up. But yeah, go and I'm going to be there doing tarot readings. We have Vince Kellen. He is the urban investigator. He's a paranormal investigator and just an urban explorer, just going around checking out crazy stuff. But yeah, it's going to be a fun event. I haven't been up there in a while, so I'm excited to get back up in that neck of the woods up in Brainerd, Minnesota. So please, if you're in the area, check it out. But the big thing right now is Paranormal Mysteries. If you haven't heard about it, then I don't know where you've been. But if paranormal is your jam, this is the show for you. If paranormal is something you're kind of on the fence about, but are kind of interested, this is the show for you. Stream Beacon TV, go there, sign up. Paranormal Mysteries. It just premiered this last Friday was the first episode. And yes, Shane Pittman, Cindy Kays, and Dave Schrader are back together. They were together on the Holzer Files for 2 seasons. And we are so excited to have this series out. Each episode will air all the way up until October 31st on Halloween. So please make sure you go check it out. Again, it's at streambeacontv.com. Sign up for it, and I will have a link for that as well in today's show notes. And another really interesting thing that Dave has done is the Outer Edge documentary. Now, this is something a little different than what Dave has normally done in the past. This is kind of him exploring all things paranormal and what got him into the paranormal. And this documentary is fascinating. It is going to be seen October 18th here in the Twin Cities at the Twin Cities Film Festival. So we're really excited. If you're in the Twin Cities area, if there are tickets available, I will put a link for that. You guys can buy a ticket and come on out and see the premiere with us at the Twin Cities Film Festival on October 18th. So I'm really proud of Dave with this one. This one, like I said, he's still in the paranormal realm, but it's done a little differently. It's him checking out all aspects. And we even have Scott Walter from America Unearthed in this documentary. We even have the Warren UFO incident that happened up north in Minnesota. We have Echo Bodine. I mean, so there's so many different aspects to the paranormal that touch base just in this documentary, The Outer Edge. So if you are in the Twin Cities, area and you would like to go, I will put a link for that in today's show notes as well. Check it out. And hopefully we can get it out, get it streaming, and that way everyone can enjoy The Outer Edge just as much as everybody else has so far. So we've got to see some of it, and I am blown away, and I'm excited, and I want to get this out there so bad, and I hope you guys love it just as much as I do, and just as much as Dave did, and appreciated the work that he put into it. So but other than that, that's pretty much all we have cooking. So, but also, if you guys would love a tarot reading, I do tarot readings at Love and Lotus Tarot. I would love to get to know you guys. So if that's something that interests you as well, please check out my link tree. You'll see the Love and Lotus tab. You can just click that. It'll take you right to my website, or you can go to lovelotustarot.com and you can book a tarot reading there. So, but other than that, thank you guys so much, and I hope to see you all next week.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot. And until our next case, my armchair detectives, stay safe, stay vigilant, and stay aware. I'll see you right here next week on Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot.